Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome. This is another introduction video to a beautiful series of Arcturian Healing Frequencies. This is the Arcturian Renaissance transmissions. Welcome, Jean. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Laura, and hi, everyone. It's great to be here and to discuss the next upcoming Mastery Empowerment class and just to transmit or share some new energies and new paradigms coming down.
Sharing the energies and the new paradigms coming down. This is really renewal energies in a way. This is really good for where we are right now on the planet to stabilize certain mental faculties or spiritual faculties. Can you share more with us about how it was that you came for these frequencies?
As I kind of have shared in the past, or just for people's information who are new to these series, to try to connect in with my perception of the higher realities, particularly working with the higher beings of the intergalactics and also the Arcturians. And in this case, with the Arcturians, getting the sense that there's new information that could benefit people who feel called or have maybe a similar resonance or could benefit from that interaction. But I think a lot of the work has been more and more that sort of the people who are called to work together, like in these meetings that we've been having, are also helping in some ways in a service level for the collective, as we're sort of all in resonance as spiritual beings, or as particularly as humanity, as a sort of even a subset of all spiritual consciousness. And so one affects the all. So when we work together in a group to connect to the spiritual world, to bring down a certain beneficial energy and information, I think in a larger context that helps the entire planet. So I think in this way, these particular transmissions have a lot of that conscious intention behind it.
Again, that is so beautiful for where we are right now in this incredible time that we're in of shift and change. New solutions can come forward. And this is truly how we consciously work towards that. And also, isn't it a collective, it's almost as if it's a group vision for what it is that we are creating. And there's a power behind that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And in particular, the one aspect that has been really unfolding, I think, as we've seen in the Master Empowerment meetings, has been that collective group envisioning, or the sharing, particularly either before or after the transmissions, as many people are receiving their downloads and are coming much with their own capacities to perceive, whether we call that clairvoyantly or telepathically. And then that's really empowered by being in the group setting. So being able to share that aspect is, I think, has become a really key or heart of the meetings.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Maybe we'll see collective visions that we have. So when we're working in these frequencies, exposing ourselves and being open to receive these frequencies, there's inspiration that comes in for new earth structures in a way, right? And developing new systems.
Yeah. What I've noticed, like just I guess my own personal evolution with the Arcturian consciousness and energies and other interdimensional beings are our guides is they're very gentle and they allow us to kind of be wherever we're at. And as we're sort of more open to receiving more, there's probably more that they have to give. So my sense with these, what I've just called the Renaissance transmissions, is both personally, I think, as maybe what people are also just tuning in, looking for, during this period, and also kind of my sense is projecting into the next 10 years or so, in terms of what can be downloaded from the spiritual world or the higher realities. We're sort of all in this place, maybe of being really very open to receive a kind of a very positive blueprint, both for ourselves individually, but also collectively for the planet, as I think the period we've been in has just shown us how interconnected we are. Mhm.
How we are all connected. And I love that these Arcturian resonance transmissions are meant to vibrationally engineer a blueprint for ourselves and humanity, really the positive change that we wish. And it comes from these higher realms. So, wow, we're already here. I mean, I saw a calendar the other day for 2022, and just
Mhm.
the energy of that year felt like another incredible, powerful opportunity for great change. So transmissions like this support us. It opens us up to downloads. Like right now, I'm hearing a ringing in this ear. So isn't that amazing? And that's what's reported in these sessions. So this is definitely higher information.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I was thinking about that myself, like in the past year, like some of the events like in like last April, they seem very much which were very positive, but like a past period, and like that we're emerging into a new period. And that might be both personally as well as just collectively, like there definitely is a new time, and that's a great time to bring down what I would call this more pact, or maybe we can talk about this model. Like there's a physicist, a famous one. His name was David Bohm. He called it the implicate order, and that's sort of like what we might call, from a more spiritual point of view, kind of the packed order of reality, where the information is maybe non-physical. And then he had a term for what we see as kind of the manifest world. He called it the explicate order. So we're sort of receiving the implicate order information now, that a lot of people probably are already doing that, who probably would be sort of resonating with sort of this message or similar, or just listening in. And so collectively, we're kind of bringing that through, and then it sort of could unpack. It could unpack immediately, or it could unpack in the next, like I said, I feel, maybe even in a decade, the kind of information we might be bringing in for this event.
We're going to talk about those 3 sessions and exactly what frequencies we'll be experiencing. But for those who may be new to this, we know there are so many opening up to this even more, and they may not be aware of Arcturian frequencies or intergalactic frequencies. Can you share a little bit more about what about the frequencies of the Arcturians? What is that all about?
Yeah. Yeah, I think as we're sort of in this interconnected way, like as we're kind of opening up to the fact that we're both in a physical reality as well as a non-physical reality concurrently, maybe that has a lot to do with this technology. As a lot of us here have been working on Zoom together, whether it's been in events like this or just on our personal life. And so, in fact, this is sort of a non-physical reality that we're in within our midst, because in many respects we're just seeing each other on a screen, which we're very used to. But it's, I think, given us a sense that we are connected, let's say, on what they call the astral plane, or the mental emotional plane, as well as energetic. And with our technology, such as iPhones or cell phones, where there's texting, you can kind of see, like, a lot of times you'll feel someone, or even receive the message, and then all of a sudden it shows up as a text, or because of the sort of the almost simultaneous way that that technology works, which starts to match the speed with which we're connected, which is through thought, which is even faster than the speed of light. So you get these confirmations with technology and with where we are in terms of our consciousness. So I think that shifts us to this idea that we are interconnected. And then overlaid on top of that, just to kind of start to answer the question about like the Arcturians, is that there are other consciousness or beings that are, let's say, in a non-physical plane that are affecting us. And like I said, they, with their compassion and their sort of awakened level, they don't rush things. So a person would sort of just kind of come to that point where they're more open to maybe that reality or that possibility, and then they can kind of share things that maybe fit like with that person's current like state. Like in my own personal interaction with the Arcturians, that's what I've been finding is as I become more comfortable in receiving more information, and then there's probably more there that they have. So there's kind of like an evolving sense of this interaction, but they've always been very compassionate, like so they wouldn't overwhelm a person with maybe information that is probably helpful and true, but maybe that person's not ready. Like maybe I wasn't ready for certain things, and so things I've had some time here, maybe over the last decade, to kind of see how that interaction has evolved for myself. So you have these very benevolent consciousness that are in some ways waiting for us just to open ourselves up to what's comfortable, and then that can help the collective also.
Yes, and they're so patient as they wait for all of us to open up to receive that. Okay, I wanted to share something really cool because I know sometimes our discussions do go this way. And when we're talking about being in fifth dimensional energies, you were talking about, we're all connected on the astral plane. We can feel that thought goes very quickly. Well, there are a couple of books now and beautiful researchers who have begun to identify the dimensions. I think Barbara Hand Clow and a few others have said the 4D, like the first D, second D, 3D, that's us here and all of that. But the 4D is like an umbrella, and it is our thoughts, it is the astral. So if we can quiet ourselves or transcend that thought, we're open up to all those other dimensions. And when we're in these frequencies with you and these Arcturian and intergalactic frequencies, we can certainly feel that this is multidimensional. It really does open us, it gives us access to other frequencies that are actually just us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that model. I really love Barbara Hand Clow's. She had that book maybe that was part of what you're referring to. I think it was like something of the nine dimensions or ninth dimensions, and this idea of like you said the dome of the maybe that was the fifth dimensional reality, the mental emotional plane, which fits in perfectly sort of with these downloads. So maybe I could say a little bit about that in terms of what's part of the mastery empowerment class in relationship to that. And what the kind of wording I was hearing was we're involved with what's called vibrational engineering, with these transmissions, because in a sense, we're downloading kind of a matrix blueprint for these different dimensions that help us individually. But there's this very strong sense that what we're doing here is also downloading something for the collective, as if like adding a little bit of like a program, because we kind of have this model of computers that's part of our consciousness, our modern consciousness, or sort of like an information packet, let's say, into each of these dimensions. So each of the days is separated into a kind of work on those dimensions, or I use the term matrix. So like the first one's actually the mental matrix, which maybe fits very well with Barbara Hand Clow's idea of the fifth dimensional reality. And so we're sort of bringing down this new information that's from like the divine through our guides, our higher self, awakened interdimensional beings, and then here we're constantly working with the Arcturians. So it's almost like adding a new program or some additional information that I think would bring in. And the term that I was really coming to me was the Renaissance, like we had that in the 16th century or started in the 13th century. But this really idea of like kind of a very positive time to creativity on the planet.
Yes, again, the positive time for creativity on the planet. And we can align with those and move with those. So, as we vibrationally engineer these templates for ourself and humanity, we're going to be doing 3 sessions with you. Go ahead and say, session 1, this is the mental grid Arcturian Renaissance transmission.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the ideas that was also coming to me, just as a reminder, maybe how this might be looked at, was actually from a period, also from an esoteric teacher that I've mentioned, Rudolf Steiner, and some of what he was saying. You know, he also was, and the group he was working with in Europe at the time, mostly Switzerland and Germany, and like in the 20s and earlier than that, like they would receive basically, and he himself would receive information from the ascended masters or beings, and then they would practice those practices, a lot of subtle body practices, as a group, and that was kind of his esoteric school. But one of the things he mentioned was, there was a period, and he was sort of coming from esoteric Christian sort of terminology, where Archangel Michael had basically, and the angels associated with Michael, had kind of cleared the astral level so that a lot more of humanity could receive spiritual knowledge. It's as if there was, like, sometimes there can be a heavy overlay in the astral world that doesn't allow that spiritual knowledge to hit humanity, and so they may have to rely on some external authority figure who, you know, who may or may not bring in that knowledge authentically. So as we've seen now in this era, more and more people are, you know, very connected directly to source. And that may be, you know, in his explanation, what had happened, like when that clearing occurred for the next 100 or so years. And we're sort of a little bit like the byproducts of that, or our own spiritual life, where we are able to receive direct knowledge and information, whether we call that from our guides or from angelic beings. And so that's sort of like, the idea would be here is that by bringing in information intentionally with the work of angelic beings or higher beings, in this case, I was mentioning the Arcturians, we can kind of bring in a renaissance that could further help, for the next, you know, many years, other people to receive spiritual knowledge. And so that's what this mental matrix transmission is, to help, you know, bring in that, because the things start pretty much from our thought forms first. So that's why maybe that's why the Arcturians may have placed that in the beginning.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify as well. For those who are looking up the Barbara Hand Clow chart, the
Mhm.
4D is the dome. That's
Ah,
the 4D of the thoughts that keep us from 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So
yeah.
isn't that interesting? Because it's the thoughts. And so when we say truly the heart is the portal to the quantum mind, hypnosis knows this. When we relax the body enough and
Mhm.
get out of the mind, that we're
Mhm.
able to access that information. So this is beautiful that we're going to be, you know, clearing that astral level and working with the transmission on that mental grid. All right. So that's day or session 1 there. Anything else that you want to add on that transmission?
Yeah, well, maybe we can talk more about this also, just because of the books, and they're like, we always have like interesting topics that come up. But and maybe even people who like to read, you know, maybe finding that Barbara Handclaugh's book, which would be great to so-called prepare, although people don't have to necessarily formally prepare for the class. But there's another book, maybe you've also read this one, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, that became quite popular, and putting that term into kind of maybe popular spirituality, the hologram. But when I first started studying energy healing, I may have recounted this in our early interviews about just my background, but I was taught by a Russian energy healer from Siberia. And I was completely new to energy work, but he knew I was in science. So he recommended the holographic universe. But just today, I was listening to an interview by Linda Moulton Howe. I don't know if you know her. She's a UFO researcher on Contact in the Desert. and she picked up that book, and I've been using this term hologram. This is all this synchronicity in the last 2 weeks in a lot of the programs, and I kind of have it in the write up there. But she said that so this was written in the 90s. She worked with Bud Hopkins, who was one of the kind of well-known researchers in UFOlogy, and that Michael Talbot, who's the author of the Holographic Universe, was one of his main contactees that he was part of his research, that he was doing research on. So Michael Talbot was a contactee, like he was in contact with ETs, and that holographic universe book was a complete download from the ETs. Of course, he didn't, he had for a number of professional reasons couldn't like say that maybe at the time. And that was one of the first books I read. And then, 10 years later, I started to connect with the Arcturians. So there was probably a transmission in that book. Well, basically, Linda Moulton Howe said the entire book is a transmission. So it's just interesting. But anyways, that has a lot to do with these transmissions here. If anyone wants background, about kind of this different frameworks to understand how these, I guess the term is vibrational engineering would work, like that you can do both individually as well as groups that you work with.
Yes, very cool. Okay. It's not required reading, but these sessions with Eugene are always like mini book clubs in a way. Mini. We just, you always refer some incredible background for all of the teachings. Um, okay. Gosh, there's so many directions we can go, but I'm going to keep it to the point here. And
Okay.
maybe we could talk a little bit about the synchronicities, because when we do this work, when we are exposed to frequencies and open ourselves up like this, we're able to see how we are all interconnected, and we can see a greater picture that is unfolding before us with synchronicities.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's why I have really gravitated to this framework of the hologram. Maybe I'll just say one or two sentences of what that is if people are new to that. Basically, it is a technology using lasers where you have a laser plate of a picture of something, let's say an apple. And if you cut a little bit of that film, the holographic film out of that apple, you can send in lasers again just to that small piece, and the entire Apple image will show up again. So it's similar to in the Star Wars where like Obi-Wan Kenobi is being projected by R2D2. That's a hologram, laser tech, but we actually have that technology. So the idea is like any small part, we're like enfolded parts of the whole. And that's why it can explain things like synchronicity. So our consciousness and our interaction is interconnected to like all these different universal universes, planes of existence, other beings. And so and then synchronicity is like how that, what I was calling the implicate order in Bohm's, that physicist's worldview, bleeds into the explicate order, which is this physical reality. So we may see like, oh, like I was thinking about holograms, and then boom, Linda Moulton Howe in this interview this morning talks about that. And then she refers back to a very important book that I learned, first studied, that had to do with, I finally realized that was downloaded by ETs. And then how did I know that 15 years later I'd be connecting with the Arcturians? So it's all these like, because in the implicate order, all that happens at once. But in this physical reality, the explicate order, it takes time to read out, but then you see how they're all interlinked. And that's where we might say, oh, that was a synchronicity. So a lot of that happens at our events too. So kind of like tying in people's past, present, future, and even parallel lives or realities.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And we just love these sessions with you. So when we do these, we actually go into our own space in silence, but we can feel the group. And that right there is really interesting. And people who've been doing it for a while are actually able to tune in more to the subtle energies that they receive. Is there anything else you want to say about session one?
Yeah, well, maybe I can go into session two. They're all kind of interrelated, but then so we can maybe have a little bit of description that may circle back to how they're connected. But yeah, the next one is the emotional matrix or grid. And there may be a reason to sort of really separate out the mental plane, which is sort of our, our thinking, as well as thought forms, from the emotional plane, which is more, from the emotional level. And that may be really important now and going into the future. And there is probably a cleansing aspect, but there's a big portion here in the transmissions of bringing down like a new information or a new blueprint. The term I was using is a blueprint for this kind of conglomerate of information that can unpack over time, both for us individually as well as collectively. But I think the emotional plane is, so important in terms of, how the other interacting with the other information matrices. There's the mental one we just talked about, and then the third session is like the physical matrix, or how it actually would manifest into the physical, which I think is very crucial, is that makes it, I think, anchors it into something practical, that people can actually feel that they're manifesting and changing things in their life all the way down to the physical plane. But that emotional plane can be like a crux position, either allowing things to happen like in ease and grace when the emotions are very like in a very high vibe, or of course we understand like if the emotional plane, like even a relationship or in a group, is kind of not in like a high vibe, how difficult it is to kind of do other things in that. So there's usually like some sense of clearing. But so the emotional plane is really very important, and maybe that's why it's sort of sandwiched there in session two, like it's right in the middle.
Yes, okay. If we can really be in control of our thoughts and emotions, we can really bring the reality that we wish to bring. And this is, again, we'll say new earth envisioning, really powerful at this time for this new decade that we're in, really incredible. I mean, we're seeing in the collective such an openness for change out of the old systems. It's becoming so evident it can no longer be denied or ignored. And so this is the true work of bringing forward a new earth with higher frequencies, heart-centered, love-based, integrity, solution-oriented.
Mhm.
Isn't that beautiful?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the thought that was coming to me also from this download, as we're unpacking it here, is that I know we've done some sessions or that were kind of in what I would call reaction. Not that it's a bad thing, but like to what was already happening on the planet. And this is a little bit more progressive. Like it's like we're kind of in a maybe like a nice still point here. Maybe we kind of working through things, but it's not like a crisis situation. And if you can bring in like a positive blueprint for the future or the near future, it's sort of you're kind of creating rather than reacting. And I feel a lot of this download is more of that creative type work than a kind of a response to maybe something that like a crisis situation that's happening. So I think that that's very exciting about that, and that seems to be coming from my perception of the higher realities or the higher beings.
Yes, the downloads that you are getting yourself from the Arcturians. We have often said you truly are channeling. You are channeling these frequencies for everyone to help us witness them and experience them as well. And so that's what this whole midpoint, when I mentioned I saw the 2022 calendar, that was the energy I felt. It was like, wow, there was a sense of a different feel to it altogether. And really that action, and talk about synchronicities, I heard just last week, time to stop dreaming and start acting
Oh, wow. Wow.
and going forward. So we've certainly done the work. We've been through a lot. And I think everyone watching this is a new earth leader and a new earth creator. Absolutely. Because as we do this work, what is there? What is there? And I'm so glad that we're doing this in a trajectory, really steering our consciousness and opening ourselves up to that new earth creation and new earth solution. Very cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's what I kind of felt or maybe meant by as we're like more open, the higher beings, they kind of there's probably a lot there that they are would love to give, but they kind of are also not wanting to overload us when we're not quite, like either ready or that's not sort of what we want. So when we're kind of, the more open we are, then there's probably like more there. And that's my perception in my own personal interaction, that there's probably even more in the treasure house, so to speak, in the inner world. So I think this is great in terms of where we're going, or where humanity is right now.
And so, as we wrap up our conversation here, we invite everyone to check out these courses and join us. It'll be really wonderful. But as we apply this to our personal life and the ways that we step up in new ways, if we get this inspiration, do you have any guidance or suggestions for that?
Mhm. Yeah, maybe we can, in response to that, we could just talk a little bit about that third session, which I think really kind of answers or goes to that point. And that's the physical matrix, or the physical dimension, where things are very, in this incarnational reality, we're kind of working with that sort of our schoolhouse or playhouses in the physical dimension, where we're learning a lot of our lessons, or also playing or being creative on the physical plane. So people may already start even just maybe by being activated through just thinking or watching this, certain projects or already solutions that are all on the physical dimension, that they may bring to that, particularly that third session, as a way to energize those projects, or to kind of maybe get more insights, not just sort of in the mental or emotional level, but already to sort of how they would implement it into the physical, or maybe even from here to now, to then when we meet again. If people kind of are part of the master empowerment class, things may already start to physicalize into the physical plane. That's sort of what the third transmission is about, is really to uh, bring things through, bring those divine plans and matrices all the way through from the subtle world into the physical.
Yes, and as we talk about that, it's very interesting when we realize that this is the call of the heart. When we hear something through our heart, it could be that subtle realm bringing us this information, and the mind is so quick to doubt it. But when we know in our heart that this is good, it keeps us focused and it allows us to take action. So this is for all of those who are ready for, even if someone has not heard that heart call yet, this is actually great preparation to hear the calls of the heart. But then even more excitingly, it's to take those calls of the heart and without a doubt move forward on them in action steps. And maybe the inspiration on what action steps we can take will come through this, or even visions of what it looks like, because that vision is, then we work backwards towards that vision and we're guided along the way, again through more synchronicities. As you were talking about synchronicities, I looked at something that I created mentally like 15 years ago, and it's
Mhm.
coming about it like really fast. And that was really crazy how that happens. But we are in this time and it's wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I call it like the manifestation matrix.
Yes.
Yes, uh-huh. And I think it's beautiful when you can also do it in a group, as well as, we're doing it on our own. But there's this group power, and also group maybe protection. Like you have a space that is quiet when you're kind of in this group energy. I think that also allows for the listening, and then kind of the manifesting quickly. So I think there's also that benefit that comes in that third day. We're just kind of also meeting in the group, and also hearing that how other people heard, like, that tone you heard. Like I think five of us all were like, yeah, we also hear that tone. And then you kind of get this, okay, that was a real experience, and we all had our different ways of how that played out. So I think there's that, you could call it synchronicity, but also the increase in that morphic field of cooperation or collaboration.
Yes, beautiful. It is time to collaborate in all new ways. So we invite everyone watching to join us if it calls to your heart and if you feel that this will benefit you. We love these sessions, and Jean, we thank you for offering them. The sign up, of course, is right here on this webpage, and we look forward to seeing everyone. Thank you, Jean. Any last comments?
Oh no, thanks, Lauren. I'm glad that we could meet in this way and that people can connect in these great platforms that you've created. And I think this is a beautiful use of the technology that I think reflects our telepathic nature. You know, like kind of we're already connected mentally, and then we kind of have this nice technology to show how, on a global or even intergalactic level, we're connected consciously.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So we're going to begin now a sample of the Arcturian resonance transmission. It will be coming from the divine blueprint or source level. You can just relax and just enjoy yourself. You'll get a sense and also a download to bring forward the new blueprint on all subtle body levels. So we're beginning the Arcturian resonance transmission from the divine dimension. You can just relax and enjoy yourself. Just notice whatever you notice. So we're beginning the first of three deepening cycles of the Arcturian resonance transmission from the divine blueprint level. To channel the first cycle of the Arcturian resonance transmission from the divine level. Now we're beginning the second cycle of the Arcturian resonance transmission from the divine level. And finally, we're entering the third deepening cycle of the Arcturian resonance transmission from the divine level. Continuing to deepen the third cycle of the Arcturian resonance transmission from the divine level. And that completes the transmission. You can gently but firmly come back to your physical body now, moving your fingers and your toes, coming completely back to your physical body now. When you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes and snap your fingers. Great. Hope you've been enjoying the talk and also this transmission. It'll give you also a divine blueprint from your guides, from source, from awakened star beings, from the Arcturians. Also, if this is the first time you've connected with the Arcturians, hopefully I gave you a sense of their vibration or frequency pattern, and look forward to seeing how this brings success and abundance in the coming years for you. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.